Okay, the meeting is
Be a
open.
tall person that sits there.
The meeting is open. And I don't think there's going to be any public comment tonight. We don't seem to have a public, right? Right. Okay, so we'll have the minutes, please.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of the minutes of March 22nd, 2022, as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First thing on the agenda is a decision the applicant is Andrew Murphy. The issue was a site plan review application to construct a detached accessory apartment located at 17 Gunning Point Road, and we've been supplied with a decision, and Bob is going to read it. The full decision will be entered into the minutes, but he will read the parts that are immediately germane. Bob?
Okay, draft, April 12th, 2022. Motion that the planning board votes to approve the application of Samuel and Vivian Trotz for the renovation of an existing office space on the second floor of a detached garage to become a 594 square foot studio accessory dwelling unit on the 0.32 acre lot located on 17 Gunning Point Avenue under section 240-12.2 site plan review of the zoning bylaw for a plan entitled Trotz Residence, 17 Gunning Point Road, Falmouth, Mass. Prepared by Jacob D. Albert, architect. Findings. As the building commissioner determined the garage to be detached, the applicant will need to obtain a special permit with the zoning board of appeals. Lastly, a second means of egress will need to be present when pursuing a building permit. The garage and second floor office space currently exist, and the applicant is proposing to renovate the office space into a studio accessory dwelling unit. Therefore, this application satisfies the requirements set forth in section 246.6 and section 240-14.1E of the zoning bylaw. The planning board review does not include building code review, and the board defers to the building commissioner as to issues related to building code and zoning. The conditions are those consistent with the bylaw.
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it passes. Pam is not going to be with us tonight. She doesn't feel well. So we'll be just the six of us. Our next issue, Kevin Clara will be representing, is from Nilton Floors Incorporated. It's a continuance. The site plan review application to raise and rebuild an existing office residential building in the rear of the above referenced property to construct a two-story mixed-use building consisting of 2 residential units, office space, and they're located at 231 T-Ticket Highway, next to the new little park there, and before Crane's Appliances. Kevin?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Kevin Clower, I'm here representing Nilton's Floors, Inc., the owners of 231 T-Ticket Highway, in their request for site plan review for this property. I think the first thing I want to note, and I mentioned it in my correspondence to Jed, is I made an error, both in my presentation at the last hearing and in my submission. This is not a raise, R-A-Z-E. They are utilizing the existing building. And I had been under that impression. I was wrong. I apologize. I didn't mean to convey false information to the board. So they are proposing to modify the rear structure with the addition of a second floor. They've had it reviewed by engineers, and they believe that the existing foundation is more than adequate to support what they're proposing. In response to Mr. Fox's concerns expressed at the last hearing, I actually went out to the site today. I am not a structural engineer, but I did not see the concerns that Mr. Fox raised. I think I took some photos of the back of the building, and you can see that the foundation is sound throughout, and there's the retaining wall in the back. Obviously, they have to, I think, Jim, you referred to some, Mr. Fox, I apologize, you referred to a hole, but that's up at the very top, and that's part of the wooden structure that's gonna be coming off. Otherwise, I don't see where it might be possible for someone to put their hand through the foundation, as you had indicated. I do believe that, they are obviously not gonna build anything that's unsafe. They're gonna comply with all necessary building codes and regulations, but the intent is to utilize the existing building in order to minimize costs as much as possible. However, they are adding a second story onto it. This duplex is allowed as a by right matter in the B2 zoning district. And currently, there's a large commercial building with this duplex located at the rear of the lot. This change would not, this proposal does not include any change in the footprint. There's no change to the footprint at all. However, it does require site plan review, as the proposal includes more than 500 square feet of space on that second floor. So to go over some of what we discussed, this lot is just shy of 20,000 square feet, existing lot coverage by structure of 35.31%. The proposed improvements simply expands the existing units, does not add required parking, does not seek, but it does seek to improve the parking configuration, which is currently not laid out. Again, I was at the site again today, and it's completely unmarked in the front, on the side, in the rear. There's no laid out parking as it stands. At the board's request, I did meet with Gary Street, the acting building commissioner. He made some determinations relative to the board's questions, which I included in my correspondence with Jed. He determined that the proposed alteration of the structure does not require a special permit from the zoning board as an alteration to a non-conforming structure, since it meets setbacks under 240.11.4A2H. It does not require a special permit from the zoning board for reduction in parking, as there's no change to the existing nonconformity. And there's no relief required from 214.1G, which talks about required width between buildings. The existing width of 12 feet 3 inches is what exists, and it's not altered by the proposal, and he felt that that would not require any further relief. The only matter he did not sign off on was the change to the parking in the front. Currently, you have parking that comes in what I'll call vertically, directly into the spots from 28, directly into in front of the building from 28. We propose to change those to be horizontal relative to the building. We have existing parking there. We want to do is make it better. Mr. Street was very much in favor of what we're proposing, but did not believe that he could sign off on it unilaterally, and it would require an approval from this planning board. I believe that, and we also submitted a number of drainage calculations that engineering had requested relative to the existing site. Again, we're not really changing the existing site. We're just changing that rear building. And but for the change in the site plan review regulations, which requires 500 square feet for site plan review versus 1,000, I don't think would be here, because it's a pretty small request that doesn't change the nature of the use of this site in any meaningful way. But what it does do is it improves it pretty meaningfully. I'd be happy to address any questions that you have. Mr. Bunker is here as well. I believe he can address any questions that you might have. And otherwise, I would ask that you approve this so that, what we can do is add, more useful rental units to town, which is something we need. And, 2 isn't much, but it's a start.
Certainly good, yeah. Jed, is there anything you want to tell us about?
I think Kevin covered it really well. I mentioned the new drainage features that are included on the site plan. I noted there is a change to the accessible parking and the way that's laid out in front of the office building. There's an extra bollard, but minimal changes. I do have some questions, but I'll reserve my questions to the end.
Okay. On the board, discussion? John?
Kevin, it shows a ground sign in front of the building.
Yes.
Is there going to be more signage on the building?
I believe there is a sign on the building. I was there today. I seem to recall seeing one on the building. I don't think they're anticipating putting anything else, but I don't think they'd want to be restricted from seeking approval for future signs.
I'd just like to know if it's going to be a lit sign or
I don't know, Mr. Drew.
neon sign or...
I don't believe so, and anything they do will have to go through the sign approval process.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Jim or Bob?
No,
I didn't mean
I'm
to
good.
skip. Oh, okay.
I looked at him first to make sure I wasn't jumping the gun.
Oh, thanks.
I'm just, I think my knowledge needs to be corrected. I thought there was a 10-foot setback for rear property lines, and I'm not familiar with our building inspector, which I defer to his judgment
Sure.
totally.
So there's,
News to me, I need to
So-
educate myself.
and I'm mad that I didn't bring my copy of the bylaw with me. However, there's a provision that says for buildings in the B2 district, or for properties in the B2 district, where the buildings have existed since prior to 1979,
Okay, so there's an
having more than 30% lot coverage by structure, and we have 35 or so, there are no required setbacks.
I wasn't aware of that, that was my mistake.
Yeah, and that's in the correspondence.
Dumpster? Am I missing it on the plan?
Not missing it.
Not there.
I don't believe there currently is a dumpster there. That's something we'll have to address.
Yeah, because with the tightness of how the land is used, I can't spot where you're gonna put a dumpster that it can actually be emptied.
What's being used there now?
I don't know. Because I don't think you're getting a dump truck through that space regardless.
Right. Which would mean the dumpster would have to be in the front parking.
Yeah, which I can't imagine what they'd do. I mean, 12 feet 3 inches? Okay.
I think anything over, pretty sure any truck that's allowed on a public road, pretty sure they don't exceed 8 feet wide. We have 12 feet here. Right.
Yeah, they can't, as far as I know, can't exceed the 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
Then there'd be enough
So
width to get through.
It can,
Yeah.
truck could get through there to empty a dumpster.
Okay.
It's just a matter of, where we,
Where you put it.
Could they get out?
putting that in there, we'll have to,
Right. Can
I
they
mean, I
put
think
it
there's space on, without, in this area right here, north of the overhead door, still providing enough space for a turnaround there.
A lot of room.
Well, it's a
These
tight
guys
site
back in and
regardless.
out of places all the time,
Yeah.
so.
John, did you have a thought on that?
I do know that for residential units along Route 28, they will pick them up at the curb. They put a barrel out there whatever day of the week that
Yeah.
pickup happens.
So it's like a homeowner.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't want to say they'll do that for the business, but for the apartment, the
The two
dwelling.
apartments.
I like that answer too.
So it's a question to be answered.
Well, I believe, I think Mr. Drewry did answer it. I think the residential units could be serviced by trash pickup. If you wanted to condition on us showing a small dumpster somewhere on the plan, I would be happy to accommodate that. They, of course, have to address the trash on site.
Yeah, because we've got two businesses here. We've got an office, that'll be a business, and we've got the flooring place, so.
But they're not, are they doing any manufacturing of flooring? They're just
No.
selling it out of it, so it's,
I think it's pretty minimal, but
so I wouldn't see where you would need a dumpster anyways.
I don't think
Okay.
they would need, for the record, my name is Tom Bunker. But I don't, you would get shipments of flooring in there and
Yeah.
not unpack it there, but bring it to a site and
Right.
do the unpacking. So I think probably most of the
Yeah.
refuse, is developed at the site where is installing the flooring,
Yeah,
not at this location. I'm sure there'd be some, but I don't think, as Kevin said, a small dumpster would.
yeah.
They must have a solution already, because
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
not
it's been a
changing.
business there forever.
It's more finding out what they're doing, and as Kevin suggested, conditioning it to put it on the drawing and let us know.
I don't think that they had, I don't think he really determined that. I think he was planning on using it for himself, but. Yeah, we were just discussing, I believe Mr. Cannavale is intending to use this office space for himself. However, I don't know that we'd want to have that as a condition of approval, because things change.
10 years from now.
Paul, any questions, comments?
No, not at all.
It might be in the, oh, Jim?
Just a suggestion, I manage and live in a building or work in a building right across the street, and we have tons of tenants, but we don't have dumpsters. We have trash cans that Cavosa comes in, picks up, we move them where we need them, and they take them away.
I think given the
Way to
uses,
get
yeah.
it done without a dumpster.
I think given the uses on the site, that's what we'd be looking to do.
Every tenant can have their own, and they can be moved if necessary. It's not a fixed position.
And we're all about to have new ones,
Yes.
Yeah.
so they'll be very attractive and shiny. Kevin, I have a question, or whichever of you knows it. Maybe it's in the fine print that I can't read. What are the materials on the building? It's nice to see the elevations, but what will the finish on the building be? The siding, the roof, the trim?
I don't know that they had gone through and picked out the exact trim and finishes yet. I think they're gonna wanna keep it in character with the neighborhood. They're gonna wanna, they're gonna blend it in, so to speak, with the commercial building next door, but in a way that,
I think the
is.
commercial building next door, just from driving by, it looks as if it's metal, aluminum.
I don't believe it's,
Is it?
I think it's, yeah,
I think so.
It's tan.
yeah.
Painted.
And the existing first floor of this building is concrete block.
Yeah.
I assume they're gonna stay with a similar construction methodology, but would have it finished in a way that's probably more attractive than what it is right now.
Yeah, our concern is that it just, it's like Cape Cod and goes along with the neighborhood as best it can. Right. Okay, we had also another question. It looks like on the elevation as if the ramp, the handicap ramp, extends beyond the edge of the building. Maybe that's just the way, it's an error in the drawing, but what is that about?
So Tom,
Would you like to see it?
Yeah, I have it right here. I think that's just the artist's rendering right there, the architect's rendering right there. I think what Tom has shown in the plan is what we're gonna end up doing in a way that, because we show the ramp coming down to the loading area for the handicap.
Yeah,
So we, if need be, we can certainly have the architect revise that to reflect the site plan or,
Yeah, the 1 and 12 slope, the floor of the office building, that building there is 26.8, and the elevation of the area where the parking will be is 26.2, so it's only about a 0.6 difference in elevation. I'll only need a 6 or 7 foot long ramp, not
not that. Yeah.
not that
ramp.
long.
Okay, just wondered. And Ted, you had some questions.
So just for the record, the ramp will not extend past the building?
No.
Okay. Okay. Lighting? Do you guys propose any lighting for the parking lot itself?
I don't think they had planned on doing any additional lighting other than, there's gonna be, I think there's an existing floodlight on the back of the building, and they'll have some downlighting on the front of the residences, but
Okay.
nothing beyond that.
And if you plan to submit a new plan with the dumpster location, if that's still in play, which
Well, I
it
think,
sounds like it's not.
I think Mr. Fox had a really good solution there where we could have smaller trash receptacles that are relative to each, the commercial building and the 2 residentials.
Okay. So for the special permit that you folks will have to take on as a separate part of this process, I would advise that we get some dimensions for the aisle, or for the driveway widths, for both the driveway opening of the north and the south. I believe the south is close to 24 feet 8 inches roughly, but that's from landscaping to landscaping. So perhaps when, there's a new plan submitted for the special permit, we just get those exact measurements from curb to curb for the driveway openings.
A little hard to do, I'm not, on the north side, the curb is pretty far along.
Do you know that plan, Tom?
Curbing is way up. It's a big opening without curbing there.
I have the
so-
landscape plan, if that would be.
Yeah, I guess the question is, would you propose any new curbing
We
in that
didn't,
location to,
I mean, we didn't want to get into Mass Highway Department
sure,
entanglement.
okay.
The year-long process that minor changes to curb cuts involve.
Yeah, so if you could just indicate the dimension of what that approximately looks like, that would be helpful. And then is there any proposal for residents-only parking, and dedicating specific spots for those resident?
No, there wasn't. It's, it's a relatively small site that hasn't been exhausted. It hasn't, despite having a higher parking need than currently exists, hasn't exhausted its current parking. These are relatively small units. There's only 2 of them. I think, obviously with the change from work from home, things are a little bit different, but I still think you're gonna have conflicting hours of need, complementary hours of need, I should say, wherein you're gonna have the business parking be needed much more during the day and residential in the evening. I wouldn't wanna limit either the business or the residents by designating certain units, because I don't think it's needed in this case.
Do you know how many employees there are in the,
There's not many.
industrial?
I think it's,
flooring.
I think it's three or 4.
Yeah, 24 spaces seems like a lot.
It has to do with the square footage.
Yeah, I realize, but for the
And,
type of
and
business.
that's part of the issue with our parking requirements. I think we over-require parking on a very regular basis. So here's a situation where you might have 3, 4, 5 employees, but a requirement for 25 spaces.
Right,
So it's, I think it's, I have thoughts about our parking requirements that we don't need to get into now, I think.
I
But
think
I
that
think they're heavy,
we're reading the bubble over your head,
yes.
actually. Any other comments?
Gary, Gary had mentioned that he was gonna defer the parking in the front. Is he deferring it to us?
Yes.
Yes,
Do we have any discussion on that? How do people feel
we can
about
certainly
that?
discuss it, but is there something you want to say about it?
No, I think it's fine. I think it's an improvement over what's there, because you're not backing into the road.
Right, and the
Coming
building
up.
commissioner thinks it's an improvement, and I
Yeah.
guess Jed thinks it's an improvement also.
Over existing conditions,
Yeah.
yes.
Right,
Yeah.
But it will still be a separate process. You still
Yeah.
have to issue a special permit, so that'll be a special hearing or a public hearing and all that, so.
Okay.
right.
And it's not in business redevelopment, so the parking isn't banned in the front.
Right,
Yeah.
Meets the current zoning, so,
And again, it's an existing non-conforming,
yeah.
and,
And they're adding 2 units, which we need badly.
yeah.
right, it's a good project, good for the town.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Mr. Bunker. In that upper section where the parking lot is, there's a big drop-off with a retaining wall going down. Have you done any investigation on the stability of that wall
I,
going into Cutter property?
yeah, I didn't, and I know at the northwest, northeast corner here,
Yeah,
It
right
looks
along
a
there,
little-
exactly.
little shaky there, but I'm not a structural engineer, so again, did Milton have, he had a structural look at some of
He
this,
had
but
it reviewed, he said, and he said he had that reviewed for structural soundness, certainly relative to the building. I'm not sure if he got all the way down to the other end of the retaining wall and wouldn't want to make that representation.
well, that's why I was leery, that's why I put one of the leaching pits on the upper side to, the first thought would be to water all flows downhill and put it all down there, but I want to minimize the amount of water that went down to inside of a retaining wall, let's say if the one leaching pit up higher, and then if you saw the calculations, the 2 pits down below aren't even, they're only like 3/4 utilized, so that they wouldn't.
Quite a drop-off.
It's quite a drop-off there, yeah, and it's,
Thank you.
he'll have to have a structural engineer look at that to make sure.
Would you like to comment on the landscaping?
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of room to put landscaping there.
Right, there isn't, but you've shown a little.
Part of what I've shown here are existing trees, just to show. I mean, basically, I put in green here, everything will be green, and really, the only put I specified a Dutch elm disease-resistant elm tree here, but it could be some other. So basically, just that tree. There are no overhead wires in this location, so it won't get in the way. And I think there were some elms. I should have looked it up to see what the 300 committee, planted in their park up here. But an elm tree, and I tried to put a little one thing. Basically, all I could think of is in this location right here. I put a little bit of green spot by the gas meter, and put in an arborvitae there, they'd be tall and green and won't spread out too much in that location. These are some existing maple trees here, cedar trees and around there. Some amount of pavement going to be removed across the back, or, you know, it's just kind of an expanse, and so cut that out and native grasses and some native shrubs across the back. But otherwise, you know, I really haven't, just some, you know, I don't want to put anything that could interfere with visibility in this location, so, you know, it might just be some low, yeah, I might just put a flower bed or something low creeping junipers or something in there.
What's the rectangle right in front of the building where I thought it was going to be all parallel parking? How does that work?
The parking spaces go in and end at that location,
Ah,
and so that,
in from either side.
the sign is right there, and so I just had a planting bed in that location just to break it up a little bit, because the cars would be staggered. I mean, the spots 2 and 4, of course, can't pull any more forward because of that sign, the sign area there. And so I had nothing proposed up here. There's, you know, there's a tree on this property here and a couple of spruce trees and some other tree down here on the other property. Because there's a tree here, I didn't want to put another tree that might interfere with it. So, you know, I really just specified two trees, and otherwise just low-growing, low-maintenance, as much as possible native plants.
I mean,
I'm
if we
glad
can-
you were
if we can
concerned
be
with it. Thank you.
candid, If we can be candid, it's a pretty haggard site right now.
Mhm.
And really what we're trying to do is improve it.
Yeah.
We're trying to improve what existing green space we can, we're trying to improve the look of the building, we're trying to improve the parking area. This is going to be a substantial improvement to the site.
Yeah, much, much better. Will this take place this year?
I think it'd like to start about a month ago, so.
Ah. John?
Just to mention the sign one more time, just be really careful it doesn't block the view of people trying to exit the property.
That's gonna exist today, doesn't it?
You know, they don't have to creep out
Sign
into
exists
Route
today,
28 to,
Sign there now.
Yeah, that sign exists today, the one in the parking area.
Okay.
So, you know, I think there's not gonna be much in the way of changes to it, but to the extent there are any changes, I think it's, again, it'll be going through the sign approval process, and they don't wanna create
Okay.
anything that's gonna be a hazard.
all right, thank you.
If we,
I'm just gonna make a suggestion, because there's so much pavement, and plants don't do well. You can do everything you wanna do to plant stuff, but so I'm gonna suggest, maybe you just wanna look at ground cover like vinca or something like that.
those are tough trees he named.
There may be tough trees, yeah, but with the heat coming off of all of that pavement there during the summer, and the lack, unless you're gonna put irrigation in there, that's why I'm just suggesting, you might just wanna do with some pretty green ground cover, but that's for you to
Good, I
decide.
mean,
Beach sand and.
yeah, some of the I mean, vinca doesn't like bright sunshine.
They
but,
like sunshine.
they're like.
Well,
more
kinda,
shade.
they're under trees.
But creeping junipers and things
Yeah,
would work
that's
well. But
exact-
on the south of this, it's, you know,
Look
it's a
outside
300
the
foot
window.
park.
Yeah, I know, that's.
And there is, you can see down the bottom of the page, there's the parking area, and so, I mean, to the south of this lot, it's not all paved.
Yeah.
So I think it won't be so bad in this location. Toward the back of the property, I kind of thought about that, and I mean, there's, you know, sweet fern or some
Yeah.
plants that do like hot and dry areas that, you know, could go there.
Yeah, that was just my thought.
Yeah.
Choose the plants that can go hot and dry.
Right.
I agree.
Jed?
Two things. Can you guys just make sure that you submit that plan for the file? I don't believe that we received that one.
Yep.
And then the other item, or really a question, is related to the parking that's right in front of the office space. Have you played with the orientation of that to get perhaps even an angled type situation, or even a perpendicular layout in that area, so you're not creating those hatching areas that sort of block extra spacing?
Well, I think the hatching is really important, obviously, for the handicap space here, because
Yeah.
that's gonna give the most ability to load and unload right next to the ramp.
Yep.
And then speaking with Tom and I spoke about this at length, and determined, and I'll defer to Tom on this, but we determined that sort of the parallel positioning of these two spaces made the most sense in terms of traffic flow onto and off the site and allowing for flexibility on the lot.
The width, it doesn't show on this one, but the width, you go to the site plan. The width is basically only 24 feet. And, to turn them
Yeah,
up.
so you've got 23 feet, 4 inches here.
I was thinking at the other, okay, this is that's an older one there, but see up closer to 28, T-Ticket Highway, it says 24.8 right
Oh, yeah, yep.
there. That actually, the perpendicular width from that planting bed to the parking is really only about 24.1.
Right, it's tight.
About 30 or 60 degrees out, it would minimize that. This location, you need that, I think, 24 feet to get in, and I think that,
Yeah, I'm just curious, considering how close that spot is to the landscaped area, I mean, clearly that's going to be a challenge for a car to get in there and sort of maneuver, and considering the fact that the lot is underutilized for parking, perhaps there's a way to just sacrifice that one spot that's right there next to the landscape area.
I would agree with you 100%, but that requires a different special permit from the zoning board of appeals.
And you don't want that.
No.
Right.
Yeah, so to decrease the parking would require going for relief to the zoning board. So what we're trying to do is establish as many valid parking spaces as we can, though we think it's probably overkill as it is, but to reduce spaces further would require a special permit from the zoning board, which, would rather not do if we can avoid.
That's fair.
I have a question for Jed. Kevin mentioned the sign review. Where do we have a sign review committee now?
Not that I'm aware
I
of.
thought the zoning enforcement officer had to approve.
Well, that's what I want to understand what the process is now, since we no longer have a sign review.
Yeah.
Where, you said it's gonna go to sign review.
Well,
You meant to-
it would have to be reviewed and approved by the town. My understanding, and Jen, of course, I apologize for overstepping, my understanding was the zoning enforcement officer was the one who handled approval of signs.
That's correct.
I'm not opposed to that. I just wondered, is that the new process? It used to be a sign review committee, and they don't do it anymore, and now it's, I think, if I remember correctly, the sign review was a spinoff of the planning board. That's something that we used to do, and we deferred it to we created a design review committee.
Right.
And then we found out that they didn't take minutes and didn't,
Then you reabsorb them.
they reabsorbed it, but somehow the sign part's been split off, but that was a formal decision made by somebody. I just want to understand the process.
I know that applicant would fill out a sign permit, and just like Mr. Clower indicated, it would be reviewed by the zoning enforcement officer.
I think we ought to look into it.
Yeah.
If it was something that the planning board did, and now no one's doing it, you would imagine
That is
that it would revert.
that is my memory,
No,
how it
It
happened.
could be
And
part
it's
of the
been
site
explained to
plan.
me
It could be
that's-
part of the site plan, and that's, I think it
Right.
should be.
Yeah, it would
Because it's kind of,
streamline it a little bit
So that
more.
we need to really look into it to see what's going to happen, because it should revert here to do something. And
we could just see how that happened, who made that decision.
Yeah.
Maybe it should be where it is, but it's just different than I remember.
Sure.
It may have not been a decision either.
Okay,
It
and
may have
Tom
just been
didn't
a
know.
default.
Yeah.
because I asked about it, and when
It
he
might have
was
been just
here.
something he did because it had to be done.
No, he didn't do it. He sloughed it.
Right,
So-
whatever, my memory is a little vague, but
I can look into it.
Yeah, that's to be investigated.
And
Are
it
we-
could be a two-pronged thing
But
where
I
we take care of the ones that are on the plans that we review, and all the others where it's just the sign could be
I
the zoning board.
certainly remember how the design
Yeah,
review
we-
committee
yeah.
got changed.
Yeah.
That's a very clear memory.
A lot of them are just the sign. Okay, so we'll look into it. I think, are we ready
Yeah.
to ask for a decision with, I don't think we're conditioning now the dumpster. I think we solved that,
Yeah.
Right, right.
right?
I will just note that Engineering Division hasn't completed their review of it just yet. So I would say, we can put together a draft motion for you,
Yeah,
subject to any outstanding comments that engineering might have. I looked through their last referral. There weren't outstanding items, and I think we covered them, most of them, this evening, so.
Yeah,
Provided
I think
that the
most of the,
drainage-
and I didn't review engineering again today before our hearing, but in reviewing engineering previously, there were a lot of comments, but not necessarily outstanding outstanding requests. And again, it's, we're not changing the site.
Right, nothing's really changing. It's,
That's the big change. You were tearing down a building and starting over, now you're not.
And
That's a major
yes,
change.
yeah, that's a big
keeping the
change,
footprint.
yeah. But we're, utilizing the exact same footprint, and we're not changing the site. And I think, obviously, if the building's being raised and rebuilt, that's a different analysis than if it's simply being an addition. So, yeah,
I think it's really just the drainage, because obviously they'll review the drainage calcs and all that, so provided that comes back
Pending
clean.
a good report from the engineer, we'll have a positive motion
Positive motion.
at the next meeting. And the next meeting is
April 26th.
26th.
that's great, wonderful. Thank you so
Great.
much. Appreciate your
Okay,
time this
thank you.
evening.
Thank you both.
Did you make a motion on that, actually, or just,
No, we're just asking for one.
okay, I didn't know if you had to make a motion, request that.
It's a request.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, before you go out, there's something I hope that you notice. It's sort of like, it's not a change to the way we do an agenda, but there's kind of a change. You'll notice the next thing that we're doing is a planning board discussion,
I did see that.
and the discussion tonight is on a determination of access, about which there's been a lot of conversation in our last 3 meetings. And that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. But because we're in Phase 2 of the recodification, where we're looking at the bylaws from the standpoint of what changes came to the fore as we were doing Phase 1 that need to be dealt with. And they won't be all major things, but they may be some things that actually do involve a change in policy. So while we were doing Phase 1 of the recodification, I think it was Bob Ament who said with a heartfelt plea, that please don't wait to the end of the process to invite what he was calling public comment, but it was knowledgeable public comment. So we thought, we've taken that to heart, and we don't want to do that. So what we'd rather do is, as we do Phase 2, the consultants are separating out for us those that might involve a policy change, or at least consideration, maybe yes, maybe not. And they're going to do the ones that are just tweaks and errors and kinds of things, and we'll look at those. The policy things will come back to this board. So first, the working committee on the board, Pat and I serve on that, Noreen does, other people serve on
I
that,
think Bob Dugan,
yep, staff people and so forth. First, they would look at the policy things, make a recommendation, then they're going to come to the full board. And we're going to invite to the full board the members of the public who take an interest and are here a lot.
we'd be very interested in contributing in any way we can.
I hope. So, because of the way things are, they're always going to come at the end of the meeting.
I'm here anyways.
Yeah. Right.
I gotta wait till after bedtime to go home now. I'm close enough that I can, if I can skip past bedtime, I'll stay as long as you need me to.
Right, your family doesn't need you, we do. So,
We've got you targeted for the parking rewrite.
So, one thing I want to point out, and I discussed this with Jonathan Dickinson just the other day, your setbacks to freshwater ponds. It currently gives the acreage of each pond for the elevation, because it says Great Pond, elevation 282.
really?
I don't know where elevation 282 is in the town of Falmouth.
Yeah.
And where there's a great pond at that elevation.
Right,
Yep.
skyhooks.
So, all of the freshwater ponds listed in the setbacks currently list that pond's acreage rather than its elevation. So that's one glaring error that we noticed. I think Bob Ament in his correspondence to you around the time of the zoning recodification outlined a few similar issues that we saw. But we can, I think there are, from both the previous iteration of the bylaw and the new one, there are a number of issues that crop up. But that's a pretty glaring one that I pointed out to Jonathan the other day.
I think the ones that probably, from what we know about our agenda, the first ones that are going to come forward to this board are going to deal with the accessory apartments and with
Yeah.
I know it's agricultural municipal uses because Frank was very, very concerned with them, but the one that we've already gotten the draft
Home
on.
occupation.
Hmm?
Home occupation.
Home occupation and home services, what's the difference between them and how do you distinguish them and do you need to? So those two will become.
Especially as things have evolved over the last few years with more people working from home. What constitutes a home occupation?
that
And I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but I think it's things we need to consider.
Yeah, well, when you take a look at what's written there, it's not doing what it needs to do.
Yeah.
So those will be early, and then there'll be others coming along.
So we'd be happy to be involved. I know, I can speak for Bob. I'm not gonna speak for Tom, but I can speak for Bob and myself that we would be happy to have any involvement that you'll allow us to, because, you know, for better or worse, I've tied myself to this bylaw, so.
Right, from now on into the future. So, yeah, it'll be really a big help to the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Good
would
night.
certainly try to help also.
Thank you. You should look at those incredible
Wisdom
landscape
from the
ones.
past decades.
Yeah, landscape is one of the sections too that we're looking at.
Yeah,
And how is that tied maybe to what needs to be done with agriculture? Evidently, our whole agricultural section is just so grossly out of date.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
it's a lot.
A lot of work to do.
One thing is anytime elevations are mentioned, they should now be on NAVD, not NGVD, which is a kind of a fine point, but it's meaningful. It's all, all the flood zones, those are the two. NGVD is old vertical datum that was used.
What does that
Until
stand for,
recently.
GVD?
Hmm?
Yeah. Right?
Yes, floodplain, it's flood, it's
It's a
elevation.
National Geodetic Vertical Datum.
GVD is National Geodetic Vertical Datum.
Oh,
It
V
was-
is the
it was-
vertical.
It was established in 1928, and then the NAVD was established in 1988, but it didn't come into much use around here until the flood maps were put into place.
But that's the one that changed the floodplain by a foot and a half or
Yeah.
It
2
is,
feet that
but-
drove everybody
so-
crazy, switching that
Right.
little language there.
So as an
drove everybody
example,
crazy.
as an example, when we have setbacks to the waters of Vineyard Sound, the 3-foot contour, that's measured under NGVD, which is now really needs to be measured under NAVD.
Which is
In order,
the 3-foot.
it's about 4.2.
Measuring the elevation at any point on, in AVD now comes out to be about 9/10 of a foot lower in elevation than it would have measured under NGVD.
So a 3-foot contour
Raised
is
havoc with
actually
the floodplain
elevation
when it's
3.9.
Well, and apparently all the FEMA maps are wrong.
No, they've all switched over to
They've
the
switched
new
over
one.
to the NAVD.
They've all switched.
But our bylaws,
Over in the bottom
but our
corner.
bylaw now still refers to NGVD. And there's a number, I mean, there's countless issues like that. I mean, the plan residential development has a gap for lots under 30,000 and lots over 45,000, but says nothing about between 30 and 45, when most of our lot requirements are 40,000 square feet.
Right.
So,
Anything goes.
I don't think that's quite the case, but.
But when you point those things out, this is something that is extremely useful to us to know so that we can close those gaps.
Yep. So I think, as I mentioned, I think Bob, if you look back at the correspondence that Bob sent in, what would have been October, September, October, I think he highlighted a number of things that were changing and needed to be cleared up. We went over some of the stuff with the Bobs a few years ago now.
Yeah.
And I think Ed Kirk sent some correspondence about a year ago. Ed Kirk and Laura actually both did a really great job of reviewing the recodified zoning bylaw and pointing out gaps and issues. And I think I probably have copies of that correspondence, Jed, if you don't still have them.
I think we gave what we had to the Bob. The Bobs are doing the second phase.
So I can,
And
but
they
I can,
have
I
it.
can check to see if I still have any of that correspondence, if you'd like.
Send it my way, absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
that'd be helpful.
But I think a lot of the initial work has been started.
Yeah.
And I think there are still many things that can be tightened up.
Well, I think one of the things that has occurred with the change now is it made some of these gaps, errors, whatever you want to call them, more visible.
Mhm.
The way it's been segregated now and things of like.
Well, we've had an initial organizational meeting to see how we'll work on it. We're having another one tomorrow and beginning the actual work. But I think it will be very helpful if the people who are going to be sort of regularly helping us receive all of the information as we receive it, so we're all on the same page at the same time.
Something perhaps to consider, and I don't know if this is overstepping, but if you'd like us to have any involvement at the board level, that might be an easier place for us to communicate some of these things. I'm not saying necessarily that we have a stake in the board, but, and I'm sorry, your subcommittee,
Oh, the working group.
the working group. You know, if it would be helpful for us to attend one of the working group meetings,
Yeah,
that
no,
might-
right, so
Yeah.
I think.
that might be an easier way of doing it than trying to tack it on some of these things at the end of a planning board meeting. But just to have kind of an easier, open conversation about what changes, you know, what issues we see.
Certainly, people would be more wide awake. Those happen during the day, but that's the working day. And one of the things that's true about this.
I'm very far away, though.
Yes, but this is when you would send bills, and we can't afford that.
This is not something I'd be billing the town for. This is, I mean, as I said, we have a very vested interest in making sure that this bylaw is operational and makes sense. And God willing, and the creek don't rise, I'm gonna be doing this for some time, so it's, there's a mutual interest here. So if it would be helpful, I would be happy to attend any of the working group meetings. Otherwise, I'm happy to give commentary at a hearing like this.
I am wondering what the lawyers think of that, if they even think, if they should be thinking about it, because it's a great offer.
Well, I just will note that it is open to the public. So the working group meetings are open to the public. We post the agenda in town hall. We've got a project webpage with a link to the Zoom meetings that we have, so
Oh, is it done by Zoom?
it is currently.
Oh, because
Can you
they're
have
out in the
an
west.
email list that could send notices to potentially interested parties?
Yeah, we can certainly look into that.
I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to look at the list and be sure that we're not displaying dreadful favoritism in some way just through ignorance. We have to be careful who is not included, to be sure it's as inclusive as it needs to be. But judging by the comments that we got, because we asked quite a list of people to comment on Phase 1 and heard back from very few. And we certainly know from whom we heard. So those people would be included, definitely. And then look to see who else.
Yeah, so if you're interested, if you just go to the planning webpage, you'll see in our current projects the recodification. And there's actually a posting of the first meeting that we held for the working group as part of the
Tomorrow.
Phase 2 effort, so
And there's
all
a meeting
there.
tomorrow, right?
tomorrow, 11 o'clock.
Right, that'd be great.
11:30.
11:30. I
11:30?
I
Yeah.
apologize.
I have a conflict for tomorrow's, but I'll keep an eye open for the next one, certainly. So thank you.
Lovely. Okay, thank you, and thank you. That'd be lovely. Okay, so now, planning board discussion, and this is the determination of access. You'll recall that we were having some issues with it because of the 20 feet, the 18 feet, the 12 feet, whatever it needed to be. So some work has gone into this. I hope you had a chance to look it over, but we'll look at it now. And just so you know who's been working on it, Jed and I and Brian. We
Former-
did drafts.
Yep, former town planner Brian Curry.
Yeah, Brian Curry. And this is what we've come up with. And one of the things,
Am I allowed to do public comment for this? I thought I.
sure,
Okay.
it's on the agenda. Right.
Now, okay? or do
I
you
didn't
want
realize that that's what you were here for. Somehow I thought you were the enterprise person.
Yeah.
to- Do you want to finish?
No, go right ahead.
Hello, my name's Alyssa Hykaris, and I'm here to speak about the determination of access.
I didn't catch your name.
Alyssa Hykaris.
Huh?
And I wanted to speak as a former applicant for the determination of access policy to give you my perspective. I appreciate you reconsidering this policy because it is, from an applicant's perspective, pretty challenging and problematic. So a couple of things I wanted to bring up. I've heard discussion on the board about preserving character in relation to reconsidering this policy, and I think that's appreciated and relevant. But there are a couple of things that I haven't heard discussion on yet on your side of the table, so I wanted to bring those points back up. One of those points is, I understand that you've spoken a couple times about legally not setting, that it's not a precedent that you're setting in past decisions, and I understand that. But I did want to make the point that it's as from an applicant's point of view, a kind of a clear direction is needed, because there isn't one and there hasn't been one. So from my point of view, as someone who was purchasing a property that needed to go have this policy, get an approval for this policy and a ruling, it's really hard to know when you're making decisions like that, not having any idea of what to expect in the process, when they could be, very financially impactful decisions. And then to that point, I had mentioned this as an applicant, and I wanted to bring it up again, that I think one of the biggest problems with the policy is that it's putting the burden on, the financial burden of making road improvements on the applicant, one person on a road. One household is now shouldering the burden of making these improvements, when, looking at that, is that one household actually bringing that much change to the road as it exists currently. Again, I think you're looking at this similarly to the sewer projects in town, that you don't wait till someone comes to a road and needs a permit and then said, well, if you want your permit, you're going to have to pay to sewer the whole road, all the houses on the road. And so I think that that's a very relevant point of view for this policy, that because it's kind of being done that way for making road improvements. And it's a really big financial burden to put on one person, kind of holding the building permit hostage until, the one sucker who needs their building permit comes up and they get saddled with it. So that's I haven't heard that discussed amongst the board yet, and I think that's really an important consideration for this policy. And I think that might be all. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but it might be.
Did you go
Just
ahead and buy the lot and build?
It's still in process,
But you are going ahead,
hopefully.
hopefully, yeah. Well, you might want to just wait and listen to our discussion, and maybe we would have questions. Any response now? I certainly understand your point. You're absolutely right. It's a difficult thing. Others have solved it by, few others, by getting cooperation of many neighbors to do that for the road. I don't know what else they've done.
I think the thing about that is they have no reason to contribute.
there's no incentive for
Most
them.
of the time, they're happy with it as it is, and they're actually upset with the changes, and they link the new resident to the changes, which is another, concern.
Yeah. I would give you this copy, if we've got another one.
I don't have a clean one.
Oh,
I can pick one up tomorrow.
oh, okay. Maybe you would like a copy of what we're considering?
I can just listen and get it at the end, or Jed could email me a copy.
I can pick one
That's
up
fine.
tomorrow if you'd like to take this.
That's it, you can keep that one, and I could email.
I have an extra here.
Didn't write on it.
Oh.
We do have an extra from a packet that's not being used.
Oh, yeah.
There goes Pam's.
Yeah, right.
I didn't write on it.
There you go. You're welcome.
Right.
That's just a draft.
Yeah, this is a draft, so this is the draft for the board to consider. This may or may not be what we wind up with, but before we get started with the discussion, I'd like to point out what I think are the major changes. There aren't that many major changes. The part under 240-21B building permit, ABC, That's all there now. That's no change at all. But what is different is adding the little paragraph, actually it's one sentence, two sentences just below it, that we supply the building commissioner with an opinion of adequacy, that all we're doing, we're not, and this was one of Brian Curry's major points, we are not approving anything. Approval is not the authority that's been given to us. We are giving an opinion of adequacy. And the other part Brian must have repeated 4 or 5 times is adequacy is not the best you can get. It might not even be very good, but is it adequate for the purpose? And the purpose is safety vehicles getting there and getting back. So only as necessary for the purpose. So it really changes, in my mind anyway, what we think we're doing. Brian's sense was we were exceeding our authority. Yeah, so there's that. And then there's the procedure that we can come back to, but the other part is to change what the outcomes might be, but to give under, we wanted to get it down to as few numbers as possible and make them numbers that we could defend, so that they would hear it saying this, that, and the numbers are a starting point for a discussion. They're not the final answer. They might be, we might not even have an answer like that, but the starting point for the discussion is 18 feet cleared width, 13.6 cleared height. That's just a starting point. So those are the main things. So now, just, if you'd have a chance to look at it, open for comment. What do you think?
So, no matter what, it's gotta be 18 feet cleared?
No, starting point for the discussion.
Yeah.
Because supposing they come and they say 18 feet. Now, here somehow on our drive, on whatever it is we need to go through,
Yeah.
there's this old and revered tree, and it has a big major branch at 17. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You're gonna use your judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a
'cause
hard answer.
If a 12-foot wide road has been working forever, then, so be it.
Yeah, that's right.
And, there was something else about 2 vehicles having to pass.
But what he was saying was, when this was discussed, and Brian apparently was one of the people who was part of the discussion with whoever was the fire person at that time,
Correct.
was, okay, 2 vehicles are passing, 2 tires on each of the 2 vehicles, or however many tires those kind of vehicles
Yeah.
have to be on a hardened surface. So the other part, the other tires are off the hardened surface.
Yeah.
So you can't have a place where there's an enormous boulder on either side and nowhere to go. You're gonna have to do something about that. But other than that, use your judgment. Is that a fair quote?
Yes, yes it is. And I think that plays into why they always looked for that 18-foot cleared vegetative area
Right.
Yeah,
to allow for that. It's a cleared shoulder.
Yeah. But it's not always the case where you can get that.
right.
And that's been the hue and cry, is that you're clear cutting a lot of these areas.
I gotta point something out.
Yep.
And I hear this all the time. When these subdivisions were approved, those trees weren't there. Especially when they bring a subdivision that's 30 and 40 years old. Those trees have been growing, they haven't been maintained. So that just means that as long as the trees keep growing, they can get smaller and smaller. I'm sure that the planning board that approved these these things had clearance on either side, and these trees in the last 40 years have greatly increased their size, crossed their branches, and grown up. If we keep going this way, sooner or later, they could be totally blocked off. So the other side of the argument's really important too. These subdivisions, I have faith in the people that were before us, that they did not approve a 9-foot right-of-way for 4 houses. I just think that, a 9-foot driving path for 4 houses when there's a 40-foot right-of-way on the plan. That is a conundrum that when the plaintiff says, well, it's always been there, I disagree. These trees grow, they get bigger, fatter, and cross over. Who knows what was there? But I have judgment, faith in the people that looked at a 40-foot right-of-way from an old plan and said it's adequate then. And our job is to prove it's still adequate now. And that's my major point on this whole thing.
But this doesn't say you won't be doing that job.
No, but the preserving what they is now is not exactly was actually approved 40 years ago when the right-of-way was there. We don't have the proof of it, but I'm assuming the planning board, if they ask for a 40-foot right-of-way,
So now I'm going to ask you, I agree with you. Now I'm going to ask you, where does it say preserving what is there now?
Bob was referencing, keeping the
character of the
character of the neighborhood, that's the argument they'll make, oh, we have a 10-foot right-of-way, we want to preserve the character. I'm betting when that subdivision was approved by the planning board 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was plenty of room, and what we're dealing with is changes that take over time. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe trees don't grow, maybe they don't cross over, and maybe everything's exactly the same, but that's just my opinion.
Anyone want to respond to Jim? John?
Yeah, maybe I'm a little confused, but it appears to me that what we're doing here is, we're gonna have a hearing, we're gonna have a discussion, and then we're gonna make a recommendation to the building
And
commissioner,
he makes the call.
and he or she's gonna make that decision.
That is right.
Okay, just want to understand what the
That's
process is.
exactly right.
Just for clarity's sake, there will be no hearing. You'll just have it under your planning board discussion. So there won't be any advertisement to neighbors or to the applicant. It
So
would
it'll be
simply
just a
be,
planning board discussion,
just be a discussion item.
not a debate.
No, to
And
give an opinion.
Who's going to request this discussion?
It would be the building commissioner. So when someone comes before the building commissioner seeking a building permit as outlined in the front part of your paper here on item C, he will refer that to the planning department, myself, directly, and then we'll initiate the process and provide our draft recommendation to you folks for consideration at a public meeting.
So it'll be like for discussion on our agenda.
Correct.
And
Oh,
do
oh,
you
sorry.
know if this is the way other towns are handling this?
I don't know if other towns
Because
are doing it this way.
Brian is a consultant for probably many communities.
Well, I can say that Brian always did it that way. So this was the practice in the past. It was, it never included a hearing, it never included notice to neighbors or anything like that. It was just an informal process that the building commissioner requested of the planning department. He then brought that information to the board. The board instructed a letter of opinion be sent to the building commissioner, and that's essentially the way it worked.
And is this going to be the procedure if we approve this for individual building permits, or what if it's multiple lots that they want to subdivide?
So if it's multiple
Or
lots.
maybe the multiple lots already exist and they want to build on 3 lots or 2 lots or 5 lots, and they're going to want to adequacy of the access.
Yeah, I would think that if it's,
I can see
involving
this, I can see this as individual lots. I
typically,
think beyond that, it might require more.
yeah, subdivision process, yeah.
That's just my opinion. I know we have A&Rs, we have A&Rs have, we make determinations on A&Rs.
Well, we got carried
Adequacy-
away with the approval
adequacy-
not required language. We should have listened to it, approval not required. But you're right about needing some dividing line between this process, access process,
Right, because
and subdivision.
I really don't want to abdicate all of our responsibility. I mean, I can probably go along with what we have here, but it feels like we're abdicating. And really, the hearings we've had recently where this has become an issue, it seems to me that every time we've really just thought about safety, not about the applicant. And we have a responsibility, and we've said this repeatedly. But if everybody wants to go this route, I'm okay with it, but
I don't follow how you think we weren't thinking about the applicant.
the applicant didn't like some of our decisions
Right.
because of expenses or discomfort with neighbors, or whatever the reason was. But I felt that we made those decisions after a lot of testimony and thought, and we have responsibilities, mostly safety. That's how I felt about it. I don't feel like we made any bad decisions.
I'm not saying we made,
So,
okay, I don't
But if-
disagree with you,
If this
but
is a better way to do it for the applicant and for our community, I can go along with it, because we are going to give our opinion to the building commissioner.
we are, and I don't think it's really going to change our discussions or our opinion.
Okay,
We'll probably still have the same discussions, we'll still have the same opinion, but we won't be casting whatever our thoughts are as us passing a judgment and approving.
okay,
We're going to be saying, well, this is our opinion, and giving it to the building commissioner.
okay.
Would then have the benefit of our thought and reasoning, and we'll see what that person does with it. It won't
Okay.
change the discussion.
But again, we should consider if it's a multiple lot situation.
We should.
Mhm.
Right, good point. Okay, I
For
think
us,
Paul was,
Yeah, I just had a question. This letter is based on opinion of adequacy, and we define it as much or as good as necessary. That's a little vague. And is there a legal term, opinion of adequacy? And is that definition satisfactory for purposes of this determination of access?
this language places a lot of responsibility on the board for exercising judgment. You're right.
But it's kind of,
But that's what we're here for.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying it seems rather vague.
Well,
That we
can
it
do
is.
whatever we
It's
want.
intended that way,
Yeah, give some
That's the intent.
flexibility.
yeah.
Yeah. Pat?
Okay, a lot of this will come up when we see a plan under site plan review. And one of our responsibilities, and John was just pointing this out, is safety.
Mm-hmm.
If we abdicate the safety responsibility, who picks it up?
But I don't think we're abdicating the safety responsibility. We are hanging on to that, and we're saying that safety vehicles have to have room on a hardened surface to pass one another to and from the applicant where they're planning to build. And determine how, what we're changing is we're recasting the discussion from a hard and fast judgment based on very specific measurements to an opinion back to the building commissioner. It's not an approval or disapproval. And what we're doing is saying, when you're thinking about it, think about that hardened surface and 4 tires, 2 on each of the vehicles, being able to do that. Not the full width.
No, but it has to be cleared on either side, no stumps, no brush.
Exactly.
And so we're talking 18 feet. And then it comes down to the burden on the one person that's looking for approval for the last lot on the road. And to me, the way I think it should be done is you apply for the town to take over the street, the town can go in, put in whatever road they want, and the town pays for it. I don't think it should be on one person to have that burden placed on them, unless we just specify that, okay, in front of your property, it should be 18 feet wide, so that somebody can pull off onto your property. And the fact that these roads have gotten narrower and trees have grown up, I'm looking at a place in Hatchville right now, it's the width of a bulldozer, they're going in, and I don't know how many lots are back there, it's less than would come before us, but it's adequate to get into where they need to get in, and people have been using these roads for X number of years. If it was wider and cleared initially, people would have been driving over it for all those years. But whoever put the lots in and built houses, they just went in with a bulldozer, plowed the width of a bulldozer and a half, and started building houses, and there was no fallout from the town or anything when it came to, okay, are you adhering to the road layout that's on the subdivision plan, if it was a subdivision plan? And so you have people that are kind of stuck with this now. And to me, to require a homeowner to widen the entire road, that's an unfunded mandate you're placing on somebody.
Okay,
And
but
if
we're
the
not,
town is gonna be adamant about that, the town should pay for it.
I don't want to be in the position of arguing for this, but as long as we're talking about it, I can see another side to what you're saying. The person who wants to build, typically as they've come here, they come before they actually buy the lot. They've
Yeah.
got a purchase and sale, and they want to know, what's this going to cost me? Do I want to pay that or not? So they might not want to pay for it. This is going to be part of the cost, it turns out. They don't have to do it. We're not forcing them to do it. and to say, no, 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 what they need to do, people who just want to buy and build a house, need to get the town to come and do it, this is like, that will never happen. The town won't even accept private roads that are already paved, let alone go build new ones.
Two things I want to point out. One, our responsibility is not to the people that are buying the lot. Our responsibility is everyone in that neighborhood for the next 50 years, okay? And I remember when we had these conversations before, we were talking about sidewalks in East Falmouth, and I was actually saying, no, we don't need the sidewalks there. And Brian is the one that told me, who really trained me, he said, well, Jim, what about if a blind person moved in that neighborhood and they needed to walk out and have that sidewalk, and you eliminated that, and they'll never be able to leave there. Our zoning is there for everybody, for all future uses, not just the person that wants to move in the house today. And that's where my time on the board has been educated through Brian, and he's created this. I was totally on the other side of this argument
Yeah.
a long time ago, but I have got there by sitting at these meetings. And it was Sunrise, the thing in,
Sunrise Estates.
Sunrise Estates, and they said, well, we don't want the sidewalk, we don't need it, and everybody, and then Brian said, well, wait a minute, what about future people? That's, our job is not just for the one individual there, it's for people going forward, and it's a hard decision to make, and it's really hard to make everybody happy.
Well, this is back to John's point. You know, what are you dealing with here? Is it a question of many, many lots? Or is it just the one lot that's at the end of the dirt road?
But it's also for the next 50 years, not just the one person that's there today, or the person that wants to buy the house. When the person that subdivided the land actually, I mean, in some of these cases, I've heard stories that weren't brought up, but people actually moved boulders into the road because they didn't want people driving down.
Yep.
And they created these issues. And that gets left out of the discussion when we talk about what they did. If you have a 40-foot right-of-way, and you want to exercise your right to use that right-of-way and pass and repass, that's your job. I mean, this is the only shot we get at it, is one, when somebody applies for it. So it's tough.
So therefore, you're comfortable putting that burden on the applicant who comes here?
No, I wanted to point out that this language is just guidance, and I also wanted to point out that we had a very long and hard debate about Lewis Neck, and we fought on it over and over again. And I think that if we all went there today and we looked at the outcome, you'd be satisfied that the debate, everything we did, what the owner had to do to the land, talk to the neighbors, solve all the problem, and worked on it. Just say, oh my God, I can't deal with it, it's all me. We had a guy went out and figured out, talked to the neighbors, solved the problems, and it wasn't perfect.
No, it isn't. He
But it
doesn't
worked.
widen at the end of the road where they all have to get out.
No, but it still was a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, it's better.
And that's really what our goal should be. And that's want to bring those 2 points together, that our view is for the future, and we have seen the result of an applicant working with the neighbors and solving the problem. I think to ask the town to do it, it ain't gonna happen. Town meeting has to approve it, and they won't do it. So we'll just throw our hands up and say it never can happen.
John?
Paul wants to say something first, then
I
I'll.
just found, in that particular case, it was not the applicant who solved the problem.
It was the
It was
neighbor.
The neighbor.
It was an adjoining property owner who
Right.
solved the problem.
Who put
And
the
it
money
isn't
out?
18 feet wide either.
Huh?
It's not 18 feet
No.
wide,
No.
so,
It got solved.
yeah,
It's better,
But-
but it's not perfect.
but it's not.
Actually,
You said
it's a
the
good
applicant.
example.
The
No, I thought I
applicant-
was referring to Lewis Neck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but there was, the guy who solved it also had a lot.
Yeah.
Had a
Yeah,
lot of it.
And he wanted to
He was
access.
part of it.
Yeah.
Bill Fender.
Right.
Right.
I didn't want to be, but he's the one that paid for it, but he got the benefit of it too. He would have been an applicant if the road wasn't deemed accessible.
John?
So giving this some thought, I have no problem with what you're proposing here for individual lots. The building commissioner is a zoning officer, and the building commissioner determines whether a building permit gets issued. They don't do letters of buildability anymore, but they determine whether you can get the building permit. So I have no problem if the building commission makes this decision for one lot. Won't take testimony, but we'll discuss it. We'll give our referral,
He makes the call.
and he or she makes the call. I have no problem with that. Multiple lots, I think we can't advocate.
I can't recall anything in the bylaws that distinguishes between single lot decisions and multiple lot decisions. There's the subdivision law that presumes that it's multiple lots. What is the number in that? 3?
No, subdivision control law says 2 or more.
2 or more? Okay, so,
Well, they could be existing lots. It's not, I'm not talking about a subdivision. If there's more than one building permit that's gonna be requested for an applicant, I think that, maybe it'll work for that also.
yeah. Oh,
Wait
yeah,
a second, I
come
wanted,
on.
wait,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
this is, I want to make sure, when we're having a discussion, does that mean the public participates in a planning board discussion? I thought a planning board discussion was amongst ourselves.
You're quite right.
I just
it
want to
is,
know what we're doing here.
But we're making an exception.
You're turning it to a hearing.
Well, I'm not intending to. What I'm intending to do is to include the person who wanted to make a comment at this point. So this
Well,
is like,
doesn't that make it a hearing?
no, it makes it an exception.
Okay, you're making a new rule, I get it.
No, exceptions have existed
An
since
exception
time
to the rule.
immemorial. Go ahead.
Just a couple of points, clarification to your example of, so actually, it's a seller's market. Contingencies are at the seller's, their decision of whether they want to include it. So it's not actually just someone can apply, see how much it's going to cost them to make required road improvements, and then decide if they want to proceed or not. It's not always that clear. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes you're already bound by contract. In my case, we don't have any contingency. Purchase and sale has been signed. It is what it is at this point. So just clarify that it's not always the way that you described the situation, and so the financial burden is unknown and can be, tied into it, and you can't necessarily get out that easily out of the contract. Another question I wanted to ask is, would anyone on the board just volunteer to pitch in to fix your road if, throw some money at your road to get, I can't imagine many people would, so I think it's a little bit.
No, we've all paid betterments.
Exactly, but not just volunteered, here,
No.
new neighbor, let me give you some money to fix the road with you. Not that likely to happen. And then my third, very appropriate to what you just said, is I think if safety is a concern with these roads that trees have grown into, or people have moved boulders, like sitting around and waiting for someone to apply for a building permit on the road doesn't make any sense. If you had true safety concerns about the roads in town, then you need to take action, go out and assess the roads and really,
We're volunteers, you want us to drive around and check out roads?
I think that's
No.
part of your role in the
Well,
board.
volunteer-
But I'm saying if you,
That's
well,
a
when
big-
people
that's a
apply,
big step.
that's part of it when you're applying. But if you truly have safety concerns, sitting and waiting for someone to apply doesn't really seem to be
That's
the
what we
best
do.
way to remedy the situation. If safety is your big concern,
What we should do.
I see your point, but I'd like to point out something. The town is responsible for the roads for which it's accepted responsibility. Falmouth is filled with private roads. The town has not accepted any responsibility for them because it would be very expensive. So chances are, I don't know what road you're talking about that concerns you personally, but chances are it's a private road for which the town has no responsibility.
no, I'm not saying the town pays to fix them. I'm saying betterments, such as the sewer project. I see it very similarly to the sewer project. That if it's truly an issue, a safety concern, that would be the most appropriate way to go about remedying the situation.
If it were the responsibility of the town to undertake that responsibility, but it's not.
But the town doesn't pay for the sewer. They assess betterments.
Oh, they do, you're mistaken.
They don't pay
$80 million,
solely
the
for
last thing they
it.
split it 50-50. Landowners paid 50% and so did the town.
Okay, so maybe
Right.
that's a good solution too, but just to reinforce why, instead of asking one new applicant to pay for the whole road, it seems more appropriate to, if we're worried about the condition of the roads, that they're not safe for everyone, we should maybe do something about it and not wait for someone to apply for
Okay,
a
I'm gonna cut
building
this
permit.
off.
That's fine,
Okay.
okay,
So,
Thank
but
you.
I understand your point.
okay.
Do we consider we consider pre-existing nonconformities in buildings and lots and everything? Is there any way we can apply some of that to some of these roadways?
I think that because it's open for discussion when it comes before us, that's the time to do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's open for discussion. It would maybe have a bearing on the opinion that eventually the board decides to give the building commissioner.
Go ahead, Pat's first.
This is just something that has nothing to do with the aggravating discussion we're just having. This has to do with how we're describing what we want the surface to be. And it calls for dense grade compacted gravel, and the same thing for filling potholes. And I think it should be changed because
It doesn't call for, it says typical conditions
include
include.
the following. I know
Right.
that.
They're like suggestions.
I agree with that, but it only refers to, or you could say such as dense grade compacted gravel or pavement. Because then that's, if the road is paved and you've got a pothole and you put compacted gravel in it, it's just gonna get kicked out. So that's my point here. You've got a paved road and you wanna keep a similar surface on it. If you want a gravel road, fine, dense compacted gravel. But that's not always a good solution. They don't last all that long. So I don't know. I think that should be up, because somebody's gonna look at this, including us, or if we put something out on our website, they're gonna say, but that's all I have to do. So I think, Charlotte, when I mentioned this to you before, you said hardened surface.
Right.
And that allows it just like, okay, this is where we start at 18 feet. That allows, what kind of hardened surface do we want to
And it doesn't
contemplate?
exclude pavement.
Correct. It can be
Whatever.
compacted gravel, it can be pavement.
So let me throw another situation at, let's say there's a lot on Lanton Lane that needs an A&R, and we look at that road to determine access, and it's a paved road, but it's full of potholes. You can't drive more than 5 miles an hour down that road.
Right.
So what do we do in a situation like that?
And you might drown in one of those
Do we-
potholes too.
Yeah, I mean, do we require the new person to fill all the potholes, or?
That's a private road.
Yeah, it's a private road, and that's
Yeah,
what
I
we're
know, it's
talking
a
about.
private
No,
road.
so it's a good
but-
example of the problem.
But I
Right.
don't think we require. I think we make a recommendation to the building inspector, and he's the one requires. And that's the
Right.
part I want to make it clear. We have the right to give our opinion on what should be done, and that's all we're doing. And the decision is the building inspector's.
Right.
So we're not the one that is making this one person who's paying money for the lot. And somebody's making money on the other side of that deal. And just because they didn't understand they're on a private road and they're taking the risk of the road, and now we're protecting them, that's not our job.
So-
And we only make a recommendation, and it is the building inspector, and if they don't like it, they can appeal that to the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
But to say we don't have the right to give our opinion because they're getting hurt financially,
That's
well,
not
then
what
why
this
are we
says.
here?
And
So
that's
we
why
don't
I
even-
argued against John saying we're abdicating our
yeah,
responsibility.
I don't think we should do that.
We are backing down.
Right.
We're saying this isn't a determination, it's an opinion.
It's an
So
opinion.
we don't even need to actually have a discussion or a hearing. If we have a piece of paper that says, this is the planning board's recommendation, 18 feet wide, 13 and a half feet high, all that, and we hand it to the building commissioner and he makes the decision.
I think it does still
Right.
ask us to give it more thought than
But-
that.
but we could
that
actually
that's
make
where
an
the discussion
accommodation.
starts.
For the tree we want to save.
Well, so couldn't he.
Well, I know, but he might not go out and look at the tree.
He might not. I think we still need to go look.
Anyways, it's a
We
hard
need to have
decision.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and it's our
Yeah.
job. I don't think we should advocate it. I think we should do it, have a discussion, and let it fall, let it go from there. And who knows, we disagree on things all the time. On this particular issue is probably the one we have disagreed the most.
The most on.
On going back to everything. I've been the one person on the 6-1 vote on this a lot.
I know it, you're the highway guy.
No, I'm not. I'm not the highway guy. I was trained, I learned from Brian. I was totally the other side, that we're making a decision for the future, not for this one person that's in front of us right now.
Okay.
I say that all the time, but I was drilled into me by Brian. My time on this board is where it came from.
Are we going to regret this, like we're looking at the sign? Who decides on signs now?
We
Because
just let it go.
So I think it's important to just provide some clarity. This doesn't change anything in terms of your process. All it does is change what used to be a policy to guidance for you folks to make that decision.
Because we've been
The
told we don't
process-
have, the policy isn't correct.
Correct. You would have to have that language in the actual bylaw
Yeah.
in order to advertise for a public hearing, to take testimony, all of that stuff that you were doing before would have to be written into the bylaw to allow for that kind of thing. Plus the metrics that you were using, and that you had written into the into the policy. So there was a lot that probably shouldn't have gotten into that policy or shouldn't have been made into a policy. All this does is outline a more relaxed way of determining your opinion to be sent to the commissioner.
That's all it is. That's what we have to remember. It's just our opinion, and it takes 7 of us to get there.
Right.
Correct.
But I don't think we should advocate it. I think we should have the discussion and make our recommendation, let the building inspector make the call. I think that's,
I'm fine with that, so long
Me
as
too.
we really thoroughly discuss it.
discuss it, have the discussion, it gets out there in public. I think it's important to have the discussion, so people that are buying houses on private roads that you can barely drive up on, maybe they should be careful about what they're doing.
They should be aware, right?
Right. They should be aware that it's not just a slam dunk, well, we've been doing it here for 50 years, we can do it forever. That's not a good argument either. We're gonna listen to both sides of the argument. And I'm always, I mean, I've started looking at our job as planning and not just approving. It's easy to approve. It's really harder to plan for a long time. A long decision is a hard thing to do, because sometimes today's effect is harder than on one person, if they bought on a private road and they assumed there'd be no problem.
What was the one that we did that was off of Old Barnstable Road, up in that neighborhood? And it was really an absolutely miserable road. It had it was the 2-tire tracks, and on this side, there's maybe a 3-foot dirt embankment and a fall off on that side. And it went out to a little pond. And eventually you would get to Deep Pond. It was up in that neighborhood. Remember that? And it was, the Housing Trust
Oh, yeah, that,
wanted to redo a house that was up there.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, that one.
God, it
That's
was-
where your trees come in.
Mhm,
Right. It was that kind of road.
mhm.
That was one on Deer Pond.
Deer Pond, yeah.
Deer Pond, yeah. I don't remember the name of the road.
I think
That's
that was
because it
Deer
went
Pond.
through,
Yeah.
I think, some public forest or something to get to that
It did,
isolated lot.
yeah.
And it would be the homeowner's responsibility to plow the whole road out.
Right, and part of our discussion was, it was going to be affordable housing, and the
Right.
people probably couldn't afford to chip in for the plowing that it required in the winter and so forth.
Right.
Yeah,
When I was looking at land, I was looking in Falmouth, and this is 40 years ago, and I also looked at a piece in Mashpee, and it was down the end of this long road, and so I noticed that there weren't enough telephone poles down there, and I was told that I would have had to put in telephone poles till I got to my lot, and I would have had to pay for all those, and there was about 5 of them, or 6 of them. And then I would have to go to the owners of the people who bought those and try and extract the money for the pole from them.
right, and you didn't do it.
So no, that was a condition that I wasn't willing to.
Sure. Would have been more than the lot would have cost you,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's what would happen in a lot of these back lots that they're trying to sell now. People will decide, too expensive, not gonna do it.
I mean, I'm torn because I don't want to destroy the character of this town, and these neighborhoods are part of the character of the town. And I don't know if you've ever been to Charlotte, North Carolina, but it's gross. I mean, they've got great sidewalks and gutters and all that stuff, and I wouldn't want Falmouth to turn into a suburb of Charlotte,
Neither do
North
I.
Carolina.
Neither do I.
We
I
don't
mean,
have to go that far. Suburbs right outside of Boston have done
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at it, I remember driving in Medfield on a subdivision, it only had like 10 houses on it. 40-foot right-of-way, dual sidewalks, I mean, it was
Right.
terrible. No,
Yeah.
and it-
There's one right up in Mashpee on 130 by South Sandwich Road. All these houses, they clear cut the whole,
Yeah.
I don't know how many acres.
But
and
there's a
I
big
think there's like
difference
one
with-
little tree there now.
There's a big difference than a 9.5-foot
Yeah,
passage
Yeah.
thing and
Yeah.
a 40-foot right
Yeah.
of way. There's a compromise in between.
Yeah.
And I think we should have the discussion. Those are great points for discussion.
They are.
And that's
But I-
really all they are, is
But it's
points
to
for
inject
discussion.
into it. Also, it's true, we're not really changing anything except characterizing this as an opinion, not a
Right,
determination.
and I think it's good that we got rid of the policy, because people hold you to a
Hold you
policy.
to it,
Right.
and we can't be held to it. We do, but the notion of compromise has to be in our minds.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And it is, I think we have.
We have. Yeah. Well, got us this far. So as you look at it again, because this doesn't have to be our last discussion on this, but until
Sure it won't.
we hear, yeah, I bet, until we hear concrete changes, this will be what we're working from going forward. Now, I think, Pat, you brought up on our phone call this morning, something we ought to bring up here, is, okay, so who gets this? Who sees this? Where will this be available?
Right.
Jed, what do you think?
So the intent would be to have it in your handbooks. So each one of the board members would have a handbook that has this guidance document. It might also have your complete streets policy that the town recently adopted. It would have your planning board policies and procedures in there so that you can refer to it during the meetings, before the meetings, after the meetings, whatnot. But it would be yours to hold, sort of a welcome packet, if you
Would
will.
it be available to anyone who's undertaking to buy something, or just something that they would find and realize this is going to guide the discussion?
This guidance document, I'd want to check, but my understanding would be, no, it's not a public-facing document. It's merely for the board members, but I
Okay,
can
can I
certainly
just
check.
say that I thought that transparency, that popular word, was more of our operating modus here, and of course it would be available to the public. If we're using it, it can't be a secret document.
But it is, once it's even mentioned at our meeting, it's a public document.
Certainly, it's just not something that would be
It's hard to
publicized on the
define, but it's public,
webpage.
right.
I think it should be posted on the website.
We can, if, with your permission, I'll check with town council, check with Brian,
Could you please?
and get an assessment for what that might look like.
Because
Have it attached to all private roads. Every private road, there's a list on the, if you go to the town website, every private road is listed. And if you go to the new geo map, every private road has a red line through it. So if you know how to look at the map and you know to do it, you click on the map and you see, that's a private road. And there's policies, or not policies, but procedures for private roads that are different than public roads. And I think a lot of people assume that it's, has the same as a public road, and it doesn't. And that's a problem, that people make decisions with bad information. So we should definitely make sure that it is there, it's hard to find.
Well, it doesn't have good signage. It doesn't really distinguish between public roads, private roads. You're right.
Well, I want to encourage everybody, I don't know if all you board members are familiar, but how many people have used the new Map Geo aspect for the town?
I've tried.
On my computer.
I'm not good
I
at it,
can
but I've
tell
tried.
you,
It's nice.
everybody in town should be using it. It's unbelievable.
It does a lot. It's much easier
it's
than the
10
old one.
times. It's 10 times better than the old thing. It links with Google Maps, it links with satellite, it links with the assessor's records, it links with everything you could possibly have, and it's all available on your PC, and it's all click, click, click. And it's available to the public, and it's published. All you have to do is look it up and do it. It's not something, it's already there, and maybe all this could be, I don't know if it ties to it, but it's an unbelievable service, and I would encourage, I've always suggested that we should always use it here. I mean, we do, but not quite to the same level. I mean, it goes down to the level that shows telephone poles, fences. It's unbelievably powerful tool that's free to the public, but very, very few people consult it.
And all you have to do is Google Falmouth GIS, and
Yeah, it takes you,
you'll get the link.
it knows, it takes their Map Geo.
Yep.
It's now, GIS is gone, but it's now Map Geo, and it's an unbelievable tool, and I suggest all of us should know and understand it. Every Realtor should certainly know it, but they don't. That's just my
Okay.
opinion.
But you're right.
It's a huge,
And it actually is
town
good.
spent a lot of money doing it. Somebody
it-
paid a lot of money for that to happen, and it's a fantastic tool.
But like all very complex things, it takes a while to feel comfortable with it. Quite a while.
It's easy to use in our zoning book.
That zoning book is a work of art.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Perhaps if the members have comments, they could just email them directly to myself.
Ah, good idea.
And then at a future meeting, I can report any comments that folks have sent in, and we can have another discussion.
We can, or we can wait and see if it comes up again, because in the meantime, this will be what we'll use when we need to determine access. And through using it, we'll find out how we can improve this one. You know, everything is a work in progress.
Sure.
Okay, you comfortable closing that discussion?
Oh, sure.
Good, okay, now, committee reports. We have a committee report here on affordable housing. John?
Thank you. At our last meeting, I told you I'd give you an update on
Yeah.
affordable housing. And the first portion is units that were partially funded by CPC. And so I made a list here, and number one on the list was Oddfellow Hall Apartments. There were 4 rentals, and this was in 2016. Then we had Little Pond Place Apartments, 40 rentals, 2019. Some of this is when it was funded, and some of it was when it was built. Gifford Street Workforce Housing, 20 rental units, 2019, 2020, and I believe the last 10 years are still under construction. We had the home we were talking about earlier at 72 Deer Pond Place. That was 1 home ownership, 2019.
Uh-huh.
We have Willets Way Habitat for Humanity, 10 ownership units, 2021, 2022. They're under construction right now. Magansett Crossing Apartments in North Falmouth, 10 rental units under construction right now, 2022. We have Brick Kiln Place Apartments off of Brick Kiln Road, 20 rental units, and that was done in 2021. We have Lewis Neck Road, 2 home ownership units that are currently getting ready to be constructed, 2022.
Is this supposed to be Lewis, not Little?
Yes, it was my mistake, it's
Oh,
Lewis Neck
okay,
Road.
thanks.
And then we have upcoming Scranton Avenue Senior Housing. I believe it's going to be 50 rental units, and that'll be somewhere 2022, 2023. And all of the above units, 100% of them are affordable, either rental or home ownership units. And so we have a total of 144 rental units and 13 home ownership units. And then I also made a list.
Don, can I ask you a question about that?
Certainly.
About the CPC, the first part, CPC funding.
This is all
They're all new construction.
new construction.
And Scranton Avenue is that project on the corner
Yes, future.
we had some concerns with.
Yes.
And that's moving forward and funded by CPC.
The original commitment was from CPC in order for a project of that nature to go forward for funding with the state, they have to have some local representation. So they come to CPC, ask for a certain amount of money that we would commit to the project. We give them that commitment. The money does not get funded until the actual project begins. And so that allows them to ask for funding from the state.
These dates are all dates of CPC funding, not dates of construction then.
Some are both. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that, probably the last 5 years or so, 5, 6 years, we're looking at 144 rental units and 13 home ownership units. And then I also made a short list of current 40B housing being built. And these are completely funded by private funds, and there isn't any public funding. So I think I'm correct with this Beach Plum Drive, was that the name we talked about
I
yet?
think it might be Place.
Place, Beach
And
Plum.
the other one, next
Place.
one's Kendall Lane, not Kendall Place.
Yes, I made that correction on my paper. The gentleman built 3 affordable housing units there, home ownership. Kendall Lane is currently under construction. It's a 40B. There's going to be 7 home ownership units there. There's 32 homes being built on Brick Hill Road right now. I don't know the name of the project, but 8 of those will be affordable homeownership units. And then Mr. McClone has just started 10 apartments in East Falmouth, and 3 of those are going to be affordable. So these are all private and without any public funding at all. And that totals 3 rental units and 18 home ownership units. So I think in summary, we have a good mix of what's been built and being built of low-income housing, medium-income housing, and median-income housing. And so we have a total of what's been built and what's being built of 147 rental units, 31 home ownership units. And I think that this is a good picture of the housing production plan. We wanted more rental units than housing units. But of course, not every family wants to live in a rental unit. And so I think, we're looking at 178 units. And I know this isn't the complete list, but over a 5 or 6 year period, I think Falmouth is doing quite well. So for the people that think that we're not working hard in this town for affordable housing, they're wrong.
They are wrong.
We're doing a fine job, and we're going to continue to do a fine job.
John, as I remembered Carly's report, the housing productive plan, didn't we need 714 units?
I think it was more like 500, 545, but, and I've
It was
said,
540 at one time. It may have changed.
I said repeatedly, I mean, right here, we're looking at 178 units.
Right,
I mean, we're not catching up, but we're catching up. We're trying hard, so.
yeah.
The need will probably never be completely satisfied, but I don't want people to think that we're not trying hard in the town of Falmouth and doing a good job at it, because I really feel that we are. And the participants in this has been the Falmouth Housing Corporation, the Falmouth Housing Trust. We have for-profit real estate developers and Habitat for Humanity. And a majority of this has been built by nonprofits, but nonprofits can't do it all. So now we also have our newly passed Mr. Cod bylaw, which we think is going to add more apartments, and none of those will be funded by public money. They'll all be privately funded.
Did you want to say something, Jim?
Nope.
Bob, did you want to say something about Habitat?
No, other than we're building, I think we have 17 on Cape right now.
Mhm.
Going, and with, we still have a bunch in the pipeline. We've got several more in Mashpee. We actually have 2 coming up in Sandwich, which has been hard to do. So we're pushing. I mean,
Bob, what are the income guidelines for Habitat for Humanity?
it's 60% median income.
Pretty darn good.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to say something else about, we have the accessory apartment bylaw, but I think we could go a little further with that, and I think we need to look at the 1 acre and 2 acre zoning areas where you have a bigger house, and maybe you allow 50% of the square footage on a larger house to be broken up into 1 or 2 units. Because right now, the accessory, with 800 square feet and, what is it, 40% of an existing?
20%. Is it 40? It's 40,
Yeah, it's
right.
40%.
It's 40%, yeah.
Because I look at the houses in the neighborhood I'm in now, and there are big houses on 1 acre lots, and I look at a house like my brother's, which was a single-family house that was easily converted to a 2-family house with the second floor, the entire second floor used as, so it was 50% of the existing floor space. And yet, if it was under the Falmouth accessory apartment bylaw, we couldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
We would have been prevented from creating another unit there. And I see that in the house I'm living in now. Be great, second floor, you had the entire second floor, easy apartment conversion to do 40% just doesn't make any sense for that. And I'm just wondering, I'm just tossing it out there, because I
Yeah.
think about these things as I drive through these neighborhoods, that, you go to a lot of towns that had two-family houses, and it was one big house, one floor, two floors, and that's how a lot of people got their start, was buying a two-family home, and were able to get a mortgage because they had income from one of the apartments. And I just think we need to look at those areas, the 1 and 2 acre zones that excluded a lot of people because they couldn't afford a 2 acre lot or a 1 acre lot. And maybe it's a way we
Jim,
could.
didn't you tell me about a change that was made quite some time ago, where some of the large houses downtown around the green
Right.
in that
The
area?
condo conversion law is,
Yeah.
and you can take a big house and convert it into up to 4 units. As long as it's still in existence, I think as long as the house was built before 1984, I believe that's the date. And there's examples of them you can see around town, especially as you get down to the beach. It was done to preserve the big old houses that were getting torn down.
Right.
And they wanted to find a way to do it, so they tried to put value back into it. And one of the things, it was on our list. If you go back to the housing study that was done a long time ago and the low-hanging fruit termination, there was 4 things. And one of the 4th thing was the condo conversion law, changing that to, instead of being 1984, to a much closer date, bringing it forward. So what Bob is talking about could
Some
happen.
of the biggest houses in town now
Right.
are the new ones.
Right, but I wanted to point out also because I was the point person and going to all the meetings and trying to channel that law through. The reason why that was put in there is because the opposition, it was one of our board members that was saying, if we pass this law, you're gonna turn every house in town into a duplex. So we came up with a formula that wouldn't do that.
Right,
And
yeah.
by making it 40%, that's how we got there,
Right.
because it wouldn't be,
Right,
it
yeah.
wouldn't be a duplex. So
Yeah.
I understand your point, but I wanted to explain how that language got there. It was a compromise to get it through town meeting
Yeah.
over objections, over,
Oh, a lot
of a
of,
lot of people. And that's how it got, whether right or wrong, sometimes when you're doing laws and compromising, you end up
Yeah.
with what you end up with.
Which is ironic, because you still have 2 families in one house.
I understand, but that's how the law
Yeah,
got,
and I
that's how the
do.
law got
I
passed.
remember that, because that was a big part of the
That was,
discussion.
that's how the law
was
got passed, and we
the
created,
duplex,
that was out of
problem.
our heads
Yeah.
to solve,
Yeah,
oh, you're gonna make everything a duplex.
Yeah.
And then we said, well, let's make it 40% so they
Yeah.
won't be.
Yeah.
And that was the mathematical solution.
Yeah.
So maybe what Bob's talking about could be satisfied if we did the conversion bylaw and changed the date instead of being 1984, making it 2000
yeah,
or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And that's but just remember, it's not as easy just to say this at the meeting as opposed to get it through town meeting,
Right.
which took many, many years.
Well, and you'd have to do quite a bit of research before you
Sure.
did that, so you see what exactly happens if you,
So, I mean, I just wanted to put not that I disagree with Bob, I'm the one that put that language in there. It was me that I'm a math guy.
Oh, yeah, well, I knew there was a reason why we.
That's why we did
went
it.
with the 40%, it
Yeah.
was because of
It
that,
was because of the objection of turning the whole town
yeah.
into duplexes, and that was the formula that we came up
Yeah.
to stop that from happening.
But yet you look at town after town with the big old houses everywhere, that's what they've done. I mean, my entire town, square mile, 25,000 people. How does that happen? Because
Well-
you had these big old
and
Victorians
it
that they.
still maintains the charm.
Yeah.
Right, well,
Yeah.
why don't we ask our planning department to put together a formula for some of the bigger houses in town, and what, if we change the date from 84 to a date, how we could solve some of
Yeah.
that? Because I believe that's all it is,
Yeah,
No, you are going to want to have like a minimum square footage. What's that going to be, like 2,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet, and the date?
right.
So that you have ample, so you're not making tiny
Well,
places to live, I think.
the other thing is, tiny is actually good.
yeah.
I
Well, it
believe
can be.
if you're trying to make workforce housing for
Okay.
someone to help take care of you when you're elderly, a 400 or 500 square, I know it's tiny, but it works. People can live in them. And if we're gonna solve this problem, we have to have some of everything.
But
we can
that's what we
continue
did
this
with the ADU.
conversation but I think that we ought to finish our comments on John's
Yeah.
presentation.
And I would want to
so that
suggest
he
he
can
did a...
come join
You
us in
should
the
come
conversation.
sit down, John, thank you
I
very
like
much.
standing here.
Oh,
He's
closer to
direct,
the door.
he looks like he's in charge.
So that's my report.
Well, thank you very much, and actually, this is quite an achievement, and I
Madam
don't
Chair.
think CPC would have done this if you hadn't been there.
Yep.
Really.
Well, thank you for that, but
Can I ask you a question before John sits down?
Yep.
I have two questions, actually.
let me get back up to the podium.
Yeah.
One of the concerns with 40B by private developer is only 25% has to be affordable. The other part goes against the inventory, so we're never quite catching up. And that's a real concern. The ones you list here doesn't indicate how many of those are really affordable or how many are market rate.
Well, you could
25%.
multiply those numbers by 4, and that gives you,
You're just showing here the affordable part.
so if there's 7 affordable, it's a 28-unit development, so 21 are for-profit.
Okay, that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, has the Affordable Housing Committee looked at refurbishing or rebuilding or upgrading existing units in town? We have a lot of units in town that are affordable towns. On Scranton Avenue, there's a federal facility, there's a state facility, and there's a town-owned facility. There've been some problems recently with it, but has the Affordable Housing Committee looked at trying to upgrade and increase the number of units on property that they already own to address this problem?
Well, to answer your question, I'm not on the Affordable Housing Committee. I'm on the community. CPC. And then I'm CPC's representative for the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. But I'm not on the Affordable Housing Committee. And I know that with the CPC funding, there are some restrictions on what we can put into renovation, and so some of it's being worked out with the state right now. But I read in the newspaper that the Falmouth Housing Authority is going to request some CPC funding to try to figure out how to solve their problem of units that need to be repaired and aren't being rented out. But I haven't seen, that application hasn't come in front of us yet.
Some of those houses are 50 years old, some of those units down there, so they probably need some kind of upgrade.
Well,
But there's a lot of space, in many of those areas, that might be reasonable for developing additional units on site. You wouldn't have to get the land, for example.
but as you know, Paul, I mean, we take applicants. We don't create housing, we take applications. And I don't want to get into the weeds too far, but if it's federal,
Stop going after you for affordable housing, period.
if it's federal housing, I think the federal government should provide enough funding to repair and do the upkeep. That's my personal opinion, but
So maybe there should be an effort to encourage that kind of upgrades being done.
I'm sure somebody's trying that, but again, that's not part of our purview. Our purview really, and I'm this board's representative to CPC, really, we're there to fund affordable housing, and the town has been really, really generous in the last 3 or 4 years. Town meeting funding the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, $1.5 million, $1.8 million. The town put up an extra $2 million recently for affordable housing, and we're spending the money. I mean, we're getting the money out into the community. That's what I wanted to show you this evening, that it's coming in and it's going out and it's going for good, really good use.
Well, the point that you made a couple of years ago, before COVID and all of that, was that the money that the town put into open space dwarfs the amount of money that the town has put into affordable housing. And the town knows how to finance something it feels strongly about, and it could increase its commitment to affordable housing.
Well, one of the things that happened was, a couple of years ago, the amount of money that CPC was setting aside to take care of the open space debt that was, I think it was in 2004, it achieved that goal. So the debt has not been paid off, but the money to pay the debt off has been set aside. So that freed up about $1.5 million of money to be divided between, for CPC funding for affordable housing or for
Recreation.
recreation,
preservation.
historic, or for more open space. So, but we have a need assessment every year. And the last couple of years, the need assessment has been overwhelmingly for affordable housing. And we've had the applicants, we have the funding, has been, and the state has given more money to CPC the last year because their receipts from the Registry of Deeds has been a landslide for every community that has a CPC. So we've had a lot of good things happen. And it's really nice to see it happen.
How many more units will we get from the money that's now available?
Depends upon the applicants.
Right.
So we started probably 2 years ago. First time we started funding private developers, and so we had $65,000 a unit. So like the gentleman that was on Brick Hill Road, he had 20 units approved through a 40B. 5 of them would be affordable. They were all rentals, so 5 would be affordable. And he came in front of our committee and said that would we help him with some funding if he would make the other 15 units deed restricted. So they were going to be for-profit, but he volunteered to make them deed restricted. So as a committee, we voted for $65,000 a unit for deed restricted units forever. I mean, we can't build units for $65,000. We can't buy units for $65,000.
Right.
It was the best deal around. So the town picked up 15 additional deed restricted units in perpetuity, rentals, for $65,000 apiece.
That's number 7 here.
Yes. And so we started doing some, McGanza Crossing is a private developer. That was going to be 10 for-sale condominiums. And the applicant came in front of us and said, if I do 10 deed-restricted affordable units, would you do the same thing similar to what we did on Brick Hill? We did that also, $65,000 a unit. So now there's 10 apartments being built, rentals, deed restricted in perpetuity. So, so we've done a little bit of for-private funding, and nonprofit funding is the majority of it, obviously. So,
One other question. Each year as the money comes in that's available, this year's amount that's going to go to CPC,
yes,
for the amount that's now going to be set aside for affordable housing, if you don't get applicants in that year, does that amount stay there and get added to the next year?
yes, it stays in our
In effect, you just build up a fund.
right, we build up the fund. And before, I don't want to get too far into this, but before applicant would come in front of CPC, and then CPC would vet the application, then we'd have to go in front of the town meeting, and then we'd have to wait for the next funding round from the state before we can actually fund the project. So it was taking a year and a half for applicants to know if they were going to get the funding or not. So we started putting the money into the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, so the money's there already.
Yeah.
CPC, when I say we, CPC started putting the money into the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. And so the money's already there. We get an applicant, we can vet the application, we can fund them, I don't want to say immediately, but almost immediately,
Yeah.
so.
That fund is managed by the selectmen, is that correct?
They have to
They
approve,
call
they
it
have
the
to,
Housing
they
Trust
have,
Fund. That is
they have
what
to
you're
approve
referring
every
to. So
decision.
You're basically taking the money away from the CPC and putting it under the discretion of the selectmen.
Both. CPC has to approve it also.
They both do it.
Yes.
So they have to agree with you, that's.
So we vet the application, and we vote, and then it goes to CPC, then if CPC approves it, then it goes to the selectmen for final approval or disapproval. So there's a lot of checks and balances here.
Sounds like a good process. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for
thank
the
you for your
questions.
service on that committee.
Thank you.
Okay, so, let's see. General correspondence, I didn't see any. Do we have any?
There weren't any?
There was none of that. Future agenda items.
Well, perhaps we could talk about announcements.
Oh,
You skipped that.
I skipped that. That was unintentional.
I figured you might want to announce our recodification meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, there's a recodification meeting for the working group. You're all invited to tune in. It's a Zoom meeting. The link, as was stated earlier, is on the planning board website. You're welcome to come and listen. And our handouts, I think, are also available on the website. And what we're going to do is probably finalize, the two Bobs have sent us a matrix that was constructed from all the stuff we had before, of the things that we need to attend to. They've set some priorities. We've begun on a couple of issues that will be discussed tomorrow, and then we'll be going forward from there. So it will be a way to kind of keep up with what we're doing and see what's going to come back. From there, the working group will discuss them, so there are two of them for tomorrow. Then they're gonna come here for the 7 of us, and for any of the interested public, for the lawyers, for the engineers, for anybody who wants to be part of that conversation.
What's
So it
the
ought to
date
be a
of the-
free-for-all.
Excuse me, what's the date of the Zoom meeting?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 11:30. And you're
I-
very welcome.
I would recommend that if board members want to perhaps find out what's happening, watch the video afterward, because again, if we have too many board members in one place, when you're talking about things they have to provide opinions on, we may run into an open meeting law violation. But I believe having the publicized meeting would potentially cover that, but I can check with town council just to make sure, because we may have to post an actual planning board
Just
meeting.
don't let them talk, keep them silent. They're not participating.
Yeah.
They're just
Oh.
listening.
That's true.
So if you check that before the 11:30, then would know.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can just clarify all that, make sure.
okay, thank you.
And don't be afraid, we're gonna post the video afterward as well.
How
So-
soon does it get posted?
Right.
As soon as I can get it up on the webpage. So
You know how
it's
these
within a
items
day.
are. They never get, put to sleep the first time you're talking about them.
Yep.
Paul?
I have another announcement. If anyone's interested, Mayflower 2 is coming through the canal tomorrow afternoon.
Will Tom be on it?
I don't know. I sent an email, but I
Quite
didn't get a
possibly.
response. My understanding is coming through about 2 o'clock. I asked him specifically, but he didn't answer.
I hope he gets to be on it.
At any rate, if you're interested, it's quite a sight.
Yeah, I've seen,
Yeah.
rerun kind of thing, but never the actual thing. Thank you.
It's also coming up through Falmouth Heights and into the town. Mayflower's the neighbor, the
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
the wind
Oh,
turbine,
different.
the wind turbine
Yeah.
power lines.
I think there's a lot more support for Mayflower 2.
I know, I was just, when you said Mayflower's going through the canal, that's what I was
Right.
thinking about.
Different. You wonder why they didn't do that. Instead of- What does that leave us? Next meeting. We didn't have any future agenda items right this minute. We'll see what turns up. The next meeting's April 26th. Any
I'll make a
further
motion to
discussion?
adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Boy, it's a good thing it was a short